Week 2 of the college football season is come and gone, and let me tell you, it was a wild week of football this week. Starting off with the first primetime game of the day was Alabama at Texas. This is one of the games that I had picked, and I went with Alabama minus 20. Unfortunately, the pick didn't hit, but boy, this game was absolutely insane. Texas may be legit. Quinn Ewers sadly was hurt. I think if he stays healthy, Texas wins that game. Unfortunately, he got hurt and the backup came in. Did not play terrible, but also looks to be a little banged up. So we'll see how Texas goes uh, with the rest of their season. Hopefully, they get Ewers back in a couple weeks. But I think Alabama didn't look as good as everyone thought they were. They're the number one team in the nation still. They played a legitimate Texas team on the road. It was a tough road test, and they were still able to come back with a win. But Bryce Young is clearly the leader of their offense, but I don't think he has much help around. The offensive line struggled. The receiving core was struggling to catch passes. The running backs looked decent, but with some of the O line struggles, it did not help the running backs at all. Defensively, Alabama didn't look great. Xavier Worthy and Quinn Ewers early on were making them look a little silly. Bijan Robinson had a pretty solid game. Um, but Alabama just didn't look super impressive like we're used to Alabama teams looking. I thought 20 points would be an easy cover in this game. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And then, as we can see, Michigan won pretty easy against Hawaii. Georgia beat Stanford, expected. Ohio State beat Arkansas State. Clemson beat Furman. Then the next big headline of the weekend came with App State beating Texas A&M. Again, Texas A&M's very hyped, number 6 team in the nation, number 1 recruiting class last year. Unfortunately, their quarterback in Haynes King did not play all that well. App State is a legit team. We saw their battle with North Carolina last week. I mean, North Carolina isn't the cream of the crop when it comes to Power 5 schools, but they are a Power 5 school nonetheless. App State's a group of 5, and they made a statement in this game. Everyone on Twitter has been kind of the meme on Twitter is talking about the amount of money that A&M paid App State, as well as some of the other schools, as we can see, like Notre Dame paying Marshall to come and play them and losing at home. Um, but Texas A&M, Notre Dame losing to Marshall, both similar storylines. Both teams just looked really bad. I don't think it's a matter of App State or Marshall being some legit group of 5 team this year. I just think Texas A&M and Notre Dame looked really underwhelming. Again, we'll see how it plays out the rest of the season. Notre Dame is playing in the ACC, which isn't great, so they should be able to still, have a decent run this season. A&M in the SEC, if they're losing to App State and playing like they did on Saturday, it'll be tough for them to get in the bowl game consideration. So we'll just have to take a look at it going forward. Oklahoma beat Kent State. BYU and Baylor played in a double overtime game. This game started at like 10:30. I did not stay up late enough to watch the end of the game. I watched the first quarter or so. So it was a defensive battle. As you can see, it was first quarter and a half, 3-0 game. It ended up being 10-6 at half. But from the sound of it, it turned out to be a pretty good game. Double OT thriller. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think Baylor and BYU are going to be in the playoff conversation come the end of the year, but it could be a decent deciding factor in their conference races that their non-conference win has to come into effect, come down to a tiebreaker or something like that. USC beat Stanford. That's kind of expected. Wait, they're able to get their first win in the Pac-12 this year. Oklahoma State beat a bad Arizona State team. The Kentucky Florida game, I also watched about a half of that game because the Michigan game, as I've stated, I'm a Michigan fan, as you can probably tell by the thing behind me. I am a Michigan fan, and the Michigan game kind of came on about halfway through this game. So I watched the first half. It looked pretty even. Florida was at home, they had a lot of momentum. Kentucky was able to kind of flip the script with a one-handed pick by their edge player late in the second quarter, which gave them a huge amount of momentum after Florida was able to force a safety on a bad punt. But Kentucky just kind of rode that momentum in the second half. As you can see, they dominated defensively, outscoring Florida 13-0 in the second half and cruising to a 26-16 win. Utah pounded Southern Utah after their close loss to Florida last week. Michigan State beat Akron. Miami and Southern Miss. This is another game I picked. I took the over in this one. Miami looked very underwhelming. I think they turned the ball over 3 or 4 times. Southern Miss also had a couple opportunities to score and turn the ball over in the red zone. So unfortunately, The over did not hit, but I mean Miami won 30-7. They took care of business, so we'll see how they do the rest of the season going forward. Arkansas, South Carolina. This is one of my bets as well. This one hit. I had the over. It was either I think it was 53, not even close to being in question. 74 points in this one. Again, both teams decent offensively. South Carolina struggled heavy on defending the run, and Spencer Rattler was able to throw it around. As you can see, he had 376 passing yards, so not much defense played in that one. Then the Tennessee and Pitt game was another overtime thriller. I caught the end of the fourth quarter and overtime in that one. Again, I don't think either two of these teams are going to be, in the playoff race come the end of the season, but again, it'll play a huge role in their bowl game consideration as well as potentially in the conference when it comes down to any possible tie. NC State pounded Charleston Southern. Watched a little bit of the Wisconsin-Washington State game. It was a defensive battle. Wisconsin kind of plays a tough ground and pound style of football. Washington State, not so much known for that, but they were able to compete. I'm not convinced Wisconsin's all that great. I know they were ranked 19th last week in the country. They're no longer ranked, but I don't think that ranking was accurate. I think both these teams are pretty average, I would say. Washington State's playing in the Pac-12, which isn't a great conference, so I think they'll able to finish up at 7-5, 8-4. Wisconsin, on the other hand, I could see maybe a 7-5, 8-4 finish for them, just because the Big Ten West is not great. But again, this was pretty decent football game if you're a fan of defense, but there were some offensive struggles in this one. Ole Miss took care of business against Central Arkansas. Wake Forest took care of business against Vanderbilt. And Texas Tech was able to upset Houston. So interesting. Again, another double overtime game. So there are a handful of overtime games this week. Then the only other game that I want to take a look at is the Iowa State game. I watched this game pretty much all the way through. I had two bets on it. I had Iowa money line, which unfortunately didn't happen. Iowa kind of had their shot at it the whole game. They were kind of leading 7-3. Then midway through the fourth quarter, Iowa State was able to get a touchdown, and then an absolute downpour started, and it made it hard for each offense to move the ball. Iowa just looked god awful on offense. To be honest, Spencer Petras might be the best or the worst Power Five quarterback in the nation. I don't see Iowa winning many games. Just because their offense is god awful. Their defense is legit. They held Iowa State to 3 points in the first half. They gave a late touchdown in the fourth quarter. But I mean, their defense I think forced 4 turnovers. You can't really ask much more of them. But yeah, the other bet I had was the under 40. There were 17 points. It was a pretty comfortable bet all the way through. They just made me sweat out the money line bet with Iowa, which unfortunately did not hit. To wrap the video up, we'll take a look at the new top 25 rankings after week 2. The top 5 actually remain the same. Oklahoma bumped up, USC moves up. There were a lot of losses. I mean, A&M, Notre Dame, and a handful of other teams losing. I mean, we'll see. We saw Notre Dame leave the top 25, Wisconsin, Houston. Oregon gets bumped back into the top 25. A&M dropped to 24. Pittsburgh dropped to 23. Texas is now in the top 25 at 21 after their 1 point loss to number 1 Alabama. Florida dropped to 18. Kentucky moved into the top 10 after their win against Florida. These preseason rankings are never really accurate, so there's always a lot of movement early in the season with upsets and everything. So hopefully as the season goes on, it kind of levels out. I'm sure there will still be some upsets, but I think the voters should have a little bit more of an accurate depiction of who the best teams in the country are. But with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next video.